I had never been comfortable with being the center of attention. Crowds, cameras, and stares always made me anxious. Yet here I was, standing on a rooftop restaurant, the city lights stretching endlessly behind us. I could feel the breeze tugging at my hair, the soft music from the speakers blending with the distant hum of traffic, and my stomach twisting in anticipation. Jakes stood beside me, looking impossibly calm, or at least that was the facade he wore so well. But I noticed the way his hand kept brushing against his jacket pocket, the slight twitch in his jaw, the nervous shift of his weight. He was hiding something. I knew it. "Relax," I whispered under my breath. "It's just Jake. It can't be that bad." A laugh escaped me, half nervous, half genuine. It didn't really help. By the time we reached the rooftop, a small crowd of our friends and family had already gathered. Warm fairy lights crisscrossed above us, casting a soft golden glow over familiar faces. I could hear laughter, the clink of glasses, and the low murmur of conversation. Everyone's eyes seemed to follow us as we walked in. Some smiled knowingly, others whispered to each other. My pulse quickened. This was definitely not just a casual dinner. Jake leaned in and whispered, "Almost there. Trust me." I nodded, trying to appear calm, though my heart raced like a runaway train. He stepped forward, clearing his throat, and my breath caught in my chest. I had never seen him nervous in public like this. His fingers gripped a small black box hidden in his pocket, and he swallowed hard before he began. "I want to take a moment to talk about someone incredibly special," he said, his voice slightly shaky but earnest. All eyes turned toward me. I could feel my cheeks heating, my mouth suddenly dry. This was it, the moment everyone had been waiting for. Jake's voice softened as he began recounting our story. The way we met at a crowded coffee shop when I spilled my latte on his shoes. How we laughed about it for hours. The rainy afternoon we got caught in a storm and ended up sharing a tiny umbrella, soaked but grinning like idiots. The countless nights lying on the couch, talking about dreams, fears, and everything in between. Each memory felt like a tiny arrow to my heart. Ordinary moments suddenly seemed extraordinary under his gaze. My chest tightened as a tear slid down my cheek, unnoticed by the crowd. Then it happened. He bent down on one knee, the small black box finally in his hand. The room went silent. My hand flew to my mouth, my knees threatening to buckle under the weight of the moment. The box opened, revealing a ring that caught the light just right. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice a mix of hope and fear. The world seemed to pause. For a moment, it was just the two of us, standing on that rooftop with the city below and the stars above. The applause erupted before I could even form a coherent thought. Cameras flashed, and friends yelled, "Say yes!" And finally, the energy was electric, overwhelming. My chest felt tight with emotion, my pulse threatening to break free from its cage. I was supposed to say yes. Everyone expected me to say yes. But then, something stopped me. Something in his eyes told me there was more beneath the surface. And then he whispered. He leaned in, so close that only I could hear. "Promise me you'll never lose yourself, even if we face everything and nothing at the same time," he murmured. It wasn't a typical romantic line. It wasn't about the ring or the cheers. It was about life, about staying true to ourselves through everything. I froze, struck by the weight of his words. The crowd continued to cheer, oblivious to the intimate gravity of the moment. My mind swirled, understanding that this promise was bigger than the proposal itself. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. Time seemed to stretch, bending around the two of us. His hand was still extended, waiting. My heart was racing, but my thoughts were clear. This wasn't just about saying yes to a ring. It was about saying yes to a life that honored both of us, with all our imperfections and truths. I realized that love, in its purest form, wasn't just public declarations. It was the quiet promises we made to each other, the ones that shaped every decision we'd ever take together. Finally, I found my voice. Yes, I whispered, almost inaudible over the noise. My fingers trembled as I slipped my hand into his. Relief washed over him in a visible wave. He placed the ring on my finger, and our hands lingered together. But in that instant, I made a silent vow, not just to him, but to myself, to honor the depth of the promise he had whispered. It wasn't about the cheers, the applause, or the perfect moment. It was about the life we were choosing to build together, with honesty, courage, and love. Once the crowd settled into chatter again, Jake led me to a quiet corner of the balcony. We laughed nervously, both of us overwhelmed. "You scared me," he admitted, smiling sheepishly. "I needed to hear the real promise," I said, resting my head on his shoulder. He kissed my forehead gently. "Then let's promise each other everything, even the hard things." And in that moment, surrounded by the city lights, I knew that life with Jake would never be easy, but it would always be honest, and that was everything I could ever want. Later that evening, Maya, my best friend since college, found me near the drinks table. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and amusement. "You look different," she said. "I am different," I admitted, smiling weakly. "It's not just the engagement. It's everything," he whispered. "It feels heavier than a ring somehow." She nodded knowingly. Sometimes the moments that change everything aren't the grand gestures. They're the quiet ones, the ones you almost don't notice. Her words stuck with me. I realized she was right. The whisper, barely heard by anyone else, had already started reshaping the way I thought about love, commitment, and myself. Meeting Jake's parents after the proposal was a study in contrasts. His mother embraced me, tears rolling down her cheeks, and whispered congratulations in a voice full of emotion. His father, more reserved, offered a firm handshake, then looked at Jake with pride and a rare smile. I noticed how his father's gaze lingered, not on me, but on the ring on my finger, and then on Jake's anxious face. I realized they both understood the weight of his promise, and perhaps the quiet courage it took to whisper it in front of everyone, yet keep it intimate. For the first time, I truly felt like I was joining a family that valued depth over display. That night, in the solitude of my apartment, doubts crept in. I stared at the ring on my finger, its sparkle catching the soft light from my bedside lamp. Was I ready for this? Could I truly honor the promise he whispered? Could I keep my sense of self intact while building a life with someone else? I pressed the ring gently, thinking of Jake's eyes, the earnestness in his voice. The whisper wasn't just about him. It was about us facing life together without losing the people we were. I realized then that love wasn't just about joy. It was about courage, patience, and sometimes quiet reflection. 2 weeks later, our first real argument hit like a storm. Work stress, family expectations, and buried insecurities collided. Words flew faster than our thoughts. "I feel like you don't listen," I shouted, frustration bubbling over. I do listen, Jake replied, equally heated. But you're shutting me out. We paused mid-shout, both breathing heavily. Then he reached for my hand and whispered, the same words from that rooftop day. Promise me you'll never lose yourself, even in the fight. We looked at each other. The anger didn't vanish, but the whisper reminded us that love wasn't about winning. It was about standing together, even when life tried to tear us apart. Life after the proposal settled into quiet routines. Grocery runs, late-night movies, burnt dinners, and inside jokes became the backdrop of our shared life. One evening, Jake made pancakes that were more charcoal than breakfast, and I laughed until my stomach hurt. Another night, I accidentally spilled coffee on his favorite shirt, and he didn't get mad. He just helped me clean it up, smiling softly. I realized that these ordinary moments, these tiny, imperfect slices of life, were more meaningful than any public display. The whisper had reminded me that love thrived in the everyday, not just in grand gestures. Months later, the world tilted when Jake's father fell seriously ill. The news hit like a sledgehammer, leaving us reeling. The whimsical proposal on the rooftop felt like a distant memory. Hospitals became our new normal. Sleepless nights, whispered prayers, and tense conversations replaced laughter and candlelit dinners. Yet even in that shadow, the whisper resurfaced. It reminded us to hold on to ourselves, to support each other, and to face the harsh realities together. Love, I realized, was not just a celebration, it was a lifeline. One sleepless night, sitting beside his father's hospital bed, Jake whispered to me again, promise me you'll never lose yourself. Tears stung my eyes. I realized this whisper was no longer just about engagement or romance. It was about surviving life's trials together without losing our sense of who we were. And I promised him. I promised myself. And in that silent vow, I felt an unbreakable strength taking root. Through the struggle, we discovered a resilience neither of us knew we had. We cried together, we fought, we laughed, and we leaned on each other. Every whispered word, every small gesture of support, every moment of patience reminded us why we had chosen each other. The whisper had become a guiding light. It was the thread that held us together when everything else seemed like it might unravel. A year later, I looked back at that rooftop day. The photographs, the applause, the sparkling ring, they were all memories, yes, but not the heart of it. The heart was in the whisper, the quiet understanding that real love isn't just about grand gestures. It's about respect, courage, honesty, and the willingness to grow together without losing yourself. I smiled at Jake as he cooked dinner, thinking how extraordinary our ordinary life had become. And I realized that love, at its deepest, was a series of whispered promises, not just shouted declarations. Years passed, the city changed, our lives evolved, but we never forgot that day. The rooftop, the crowd, the ring, it all faded into memory. But the whisper remained. It reminded us to be ourselves, to face life's challenges with courage, and to never forget that love is not just a moment. It's a promise, a commitment, a quiet courage shared between two hearts. Sometimes, I think, the smallest whisper carries more power than the loudest cheer. And we carried that whisper always through every chapter of our lives,